They set forth at daybreak to see a man beheaded, 20 in all. Bran rode along with them, nervous with excitement. This was his first time he had been deemed old enough to go with the Lord Father and his brothers to see the king's justice done. It was the ninth year of the summer, the seventh of Bran's life. Man had been taken outside a small holdfast in the hills. Rob thought he was wildling, his sword sworn to Main's radar, the king beyond the wall. It made the Bran's skin prickle to think of it. He remembered the hard tales old Nan told him. The wildlings were cruel men, she said, slavers, slayers, and thieves. They consorted the giants, Gaul, stole girls, children in the dead of a night, and drank blood from polished horns. And their women lay with the others in the long night to sire terrible half human children. But the main found bound hand and foot to the holdfast while awaiting the king's justice was old and scrawny, much not taller than Rob. He had lost both ears and finger to frostbite, and he dressed all in black, the same as the brothers of Night's Watch, except that his furs were ragged and greasy. The breath of a man and horse mingled, steaming in a cold morning air, as his lord father had the man cut down from the wall and dragged before them. Rob and John sat tall and still on their horses, with the Bran between them on his pony, trying to seem older than 7, trying to pretend that he had seen all this before. A faint wind blew through the Holdfast gate. Over their heads flapped the banner of a Starks of Winterfell, a great dire wolf racing across the ice-white field. The Bran's father sat solemnly on his horse, and long brown hair staring in the wind. His closely trimmed beard was short with white, making him look older than his 35 years. He had grim cast, two grey eyes these days, and he seems not all the man who would sit before the fire in the evening and talk softly of the age of heroes and children of the forest. He had taken off father's face, the brand thought, and donned the face of a Lord Stark of Winterfell. There were questions asked and answers given in the heel of a morning, but afterward Bran could not recall much of what had been said. Finally, his Lord Father gave a command, and two of his groundsmen dragged the raged man to the iron's food, stumped in a corner of a square. They forced his head down on the hard black wood. Lord Eddard Stark dismounted, and his ward Theon Greyjoy brought forth the sword. Ice. The sword was called. It was as wide across as a man's hand and taller even than Rob. The blade was of Valerian steel, spell forged and dark as smoke. Nothing held like an edge like a Valerian steel. His father peeled off his gloves, handed them to the gro- gory castle, the captain of his house guard. He took the hold of her eyes with the both hands and said, "In the name of a Robert of a house Baratheon, the first of his name, king of Andals, Rhoenar and first man, the lord of a seven kingdom, protector of the realm, by the word of Eddard of House Stark, the lord of Winterfell, and warden of a north, I do sentence you die." He lifted the great sword high above his head. The brand bastard brother Jon Snow moved closer. "Keep the pony well in hand," he whispered, And don't look away. Father will know if you do. The Bran kept his pony well in the hand and didn't look away. His father took off the man's head with a single sure stroke. The blood sprayed out across the snow as the red as a summer wine. One of the horses reared and had to restrain to keep from bloating. The Bran could not take his eyes off the blood. The snows around the stump drank it eagerly, reddening as he watched. The head bounced off the thick fruit and rolled. It come up near Greyjoy's feet. Theon was a lean, dark youth of 19 who found everything amusing. He laughed, put his foot put his boot on the head and kicked it away. Ass, John muttered, low enough so the Greyjoy didn't hear. He put the hand of a Bran's shoulder, and Bran looked over his bastard's brother. You did well, John told him solemnly. John was a 14, an old hand at justice. It seems colder on a long ride back to Winterfell. Though wind had died by then, the sun was higher in the sky. The Bran rode with his brothers, well ahead of the main party, his pony struggling hard to keep up with their horses. The deserter died bravely, Rob said. He was big and broad, growing every day. With his mother's coloring and fair skin, red brown hair, and blue eyes of a Tullies of River Run, he had a courage at least. No, Jon Snow said quietly. It was not courage. This one was dead of a fear. You could see in its eyes, Stark. John's eyes were grey and so dark they seemed almost black, but there was a little they did not see. He was of age of a Rob, but they did not look alike. John was a slender, where Rob was a muscular, dark, where Rob was a fair, graceful, quick, where his half brother was strong and fast. Rob was not impressed. The others take his eyes, he saw. He died well. Race you to the bridge. Dan, John said. Kicking his horse forward, Rob cursed and followed. They galloped off down the trail, the Robs laughing and hooting, John silent and intent. The hoofs of their horses kept up showers of snow as they went. The Bran did not try to follow. His pony could not keep up. He had seen the raged man's eyes, and he was thinking of them now. After a while, the sound of Rolf's laughter receded, and the woods grew silent again. So deep in a thought was he that he never heard the rest of the party until his father moved up to the right and beside Sims. Are you well, Brian? He asked, not unkindly. Yes, father, the Brian told him. He looked up, wrapped his furs and leathers, mounted on his great warhorse. His lord father looked over him like a giant. Rob says the man died bravely, but John says he was afraid. What do you think? His father asked. Bran thought about it. Can a man still be a brave if he is afraid? That's the only a time a man can be brave, his father told him. Do you understand why I did it? He was wildly, the Bran said. They carry off women and sell them to the others. His lord father smiled. Old Nan has been telling you the stories again. In the truth, the man was Oathbreaker, a deserter from the Night's Watch. A man is more dangerous. The deserter knows his life is forfeit if he is taken, and so he will not flinch from any crime, no matter how vile. But you mistake me. The question was not why man had to die, but why I must do it. The Bran had no answer to that. The King Roberts has a headsman, he said uncertainly. He does, his father admitted, as did the Targaryen kings before him. Yet our way is an older way. The blood of a first man still flows in the veins of a star, and we hold to believe that the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. If you would take the man's life, you owe it to him to look into his eyes and fear his final words. And if you cannot bear to do that, then perhaps the man doesn't deserve to die. One day, Brian, you will be the Rob's bannerman, holding keep of your own, of your brother and your king, and justice will follow you. When that day comes, you must take no pleasure in the task, but neither must you look away. A ruler who hides behind the pain, executioner soon forgets their death is. That was when John reappeared on the crest of the hill before them. He waved and shouted down at them, Father, Bran, come quickly and see what Robs has found. Then he gone again. Jory rode up beside him. Trouble, my lord? Beyond a doubt, his father said. Come, let us see what mischief my sons have rooted out now. He sent his horse into trot. Jory and Bran and the rest came after. They found Rob on a river bank north of Reach, with the John still mounted beside him. The late summer snows had been heavy this moon turn, and Rob stood knee deep in the white, his hood pulled back so the sun shone in his hairs. He was cradling something in his arm, while the boys talked in hushed and excited voices. The riders picked their way carefully through the drifts, groping for a solid footing on the hidden, uneven ground. Jory Castle and the Theon Greyjoys were the first to reach to the boys. Greyjoy was laughing and joking as he rode. The Bran heard the breath go out of him. Gods! He exclaimed, struggling to keep control of his horse as he reached for his sword. Jory's sword was already out. Rob, get away from it, he said, and his horse reared under him. Rob screamed and looked up from the bundle in his arm. She can't hurt you, he said. She is dead, Jory. The Bran was afire with curiosity by then. He would have spurred the pony faster, but his father made them dismount besides the bridge and approach on foot. The Bran jumped off and ran. By then, John, Jory, Theon Greyjoy had dismounted as well. What in a seventh hell is this? The Greyjoy was saying. A wolf, the Rob told them. A frick! Look at the size of it. The Bran's heart was thumping in his chest as he pushed through a waist high drift to his brother's side. Half buried in the blood-stained snow, a huge dark shape slumped in a death. Eyes had formed in the shaggy grey fur, and faint smell of corruption clung to it like a woman's perfume. The Bran glimpsed the blind eyes crawling with maggots, a wide mouth full of yellow teeth, but it was the size of it that made him gasp. It was bigger than his pony, twice the size of a largest hound in the father's kennel. It's no freak, the John said calmly. That's dire wolf. They grow larger than the other kind. Theon Greyjoy said, there is not been dire wolf sighted and the south of the wall in 200 years. I see one now, John replied. The Bran tore his eyes away from the monster. That was when he noticed the bundle in the rob's arm. He gave a cry of delight and moved closer. The pup was a tiny ball of grey black fur, its eyes still closed. It nuzzled blindly against Rob's chest as she cradled it and searching for a milk among his leathers and making a sad little whimpery sound. The Bran reached out hesitantly. Go on, Rob told him. You can touch him. The Bran gave the pup a quick nervous stroke. then turned as John said, "Here you go." His half brother put a second pup into his arm. "There are five of them." The brand sat down in a snow, hugged the work pup into his furs. Its fur was soft and warm against his cheek. "Direwolves loose in the realm after so many years," muttered Yulin, the master of horse. "I like it not." "It's a sign," Jory said. Father frowned. "This is only dead animal, Jory," he said. Yet he seemed troubled. The snow crunches under his boots as he moved under the body. "Do we know what killed her?" There was something in the throat. The Rob told him, and proud to have found the answer before his father even asked. "There is, just under the jaw." His father knelt and groped under the beast's head with his hand. He gave a yank and held it up with all to see. A foot of a shattered antler. Tines snapped off, and all wet with the blood. A sudden silence descended over the party. The men looked at the antler uneasily, and no one dared to speak. Even Bran could sense their fear, though he did not understand. His father tossed the antler to the side and cleansed it with his hands in the snow. "I am surprised she lived long enough to help," he said. His voice broke the spell. "Maybe she didn't. I have heard the tales. Maybe the bitch was already dead when pups came." "Born with the dead," another man put in. "Worse luck." "No matter," said Helen. "They be dead soon enough." The brand gave a wordless cry of dismay. "The sooner the better," Kian Greyjoy agreed. He drew his sword. "Give the beast here, Bran." The little thing screamed against him as if it heard and understood. "No," the Bran cried out fiercely. "It's mine." "Put away your swords, Greyjoy," Rob said. For a moment he sounded commanding like his father, like the lord he would someday be. "We will keep these pups." "You cannot do that, boy," said Harwin, who was a Yulin's son. "It may be mercy to kill them," Yulin said. The Bran looked at his lord father for rescue, but got only a frown and furrowed brow. "Yulin speaks truly, son. Better a swift death than a hard one from the cold and starvation." No, he could feel the tears welling in his eyes, and he looked away. He did not want to cry in front of his father. Rob resisted stubbornly. "Said Roderick's red bitch whelped again last week," he said. "It was a small litter, only two live pups. She will have a milk enough. She will rip them apart when they try to nurse." "Lord Stark," John said. It was strange to hear him call a father that so formal. The Bran looked at him with a desperate hope. "There are five pups," he told father. "Three male, two female." "What of it, John?" "You have five true-born children," John said. "Three sons, two daughters. The dire wolf is the sigil of your house. Your children were meant to have these pups, my lord." Bran saw his father's face changed, saw the other men exchange glances. He loved the John with all his heart at the moment. Even at a 7, the Bran understood what his brothers has done. The Count had come right only because John had omitted himself. He had included the girls, included even Recon, the baby, but not the bastard who bore the surname Snow, the name that customs decreed to be given all those in the north unlucky enough to born with no name of their own. Their father understood as well. "You want no pup for yourself, John?" he asked softly. "The dire wolf graces the banners of House Stark," John pointed out. "I am no Stark, father." Their Lord Father regarded John thoughtfully. The Rob brushed into the silence he left. "I will nurse them myself, father," he promised. "I will soak a towel with a warm milk and give him a suck from that." "Me too," the brand echoed. The Lord weighed his sons long and carefully with his eyes. Easy to say and harder to do. I will not have you wasting the servants' time with this. If you want these pups, you will feed them yourself. Is that understood? He said. Bran nodded eagerly. The pup smeared in his grubs and licked his face with a warm tongue. You must train them as well. You must train them. The canal masters will have nothing to do with these monsters. I promise you that. And the gods will help you if you neglect them or brutalize them or train them badly. These are not dogs to beg for threats and slink off at a nick. The direwolf will rip the man's arm off his shoulder as easily as a dog will kill a rat. Are you sure you want this? Yes, father, Bran said. Yes, Rob agreed. The pups may die anyway, despite all of you do. They won't die, Rob said. We won't let them die. Keep them then. Jory, Desmond, gather up all the pups. It's time we are back to Winterfell. It was not until they were mounted and on their way that Brown allowed himself to taste the sweet air of victory. By then, his pup was smocked inside his leathers, warms against him. Safe for a long ride home, Bran was wondering what to name him. Halfway across the bridge, John pulled up suddenly. What is it, John? Their Lord Father asked. Can't you hear it? Bran could hear the wind in the trees and the clatter of their hoofs in the ironwood planks, the whimpering of his hungry pup. But John was listening to something else. There, John said. He swung his horse around and galloped back across the bridge. They watched him dismount where the direwolf lay dead in the snow. Watch him kneel. A moment later, he was riding back to them, smiling. You must have crawled away from the others, John Snow, or been driven away, their father said, looking at the sixth pup. His fur was white, where the rest little were grey. His eyes were red as the blood of a wretched man who had died that morning. The Bran thought it curious that his pup alone would have opened his eyes while others were still blind. An albino, the Theon Greyjoy said with a wry amusement. This one will die even faster than others. Jon Snow gave his father's ward a long, chilling look. I think not, Greyjoy, he said. This one belongs to me. Kathleen. The Kathleen had never liked the Godswood. She had been born Tully at the river run far to the south on the red fork of Trident. The Godswoods, there was a garden, bright, airy, where all redwood sprayed dappled shadows across tinkling streams. Birds sang from the hidden nest, and air was spicy with the scent of flowers. The gods of Winterfell kept a different sort of a wood. It was a dark, primal face, 3 acres of old forest, untouched for a 10,000 years, as a gloomy castle rose around it. It smelled of a moist earth and decay. No redwoods grew here. This was a wood of a stubble-born sentinel trees armored in the grey-green needles of a mighty oaks of ironwoods as old as the realms itself. Here thick black trunks crowded close together, while twisted branches wove a dense canopy overhead and misshapen roots bristled beneath the soil, and this was a place of a deep silence and brooding shadows, and gods who lived here had no names. But she knew she would find her husband here tonight. Whenever he took the man's life, afterward, he would seek the quiet of God's wood. Kathleen had been anointed with the 7 oils and named in the rainbow of a light that filled the sept of River Run. She was the faith like her father and grandfather had his father before him. Her gods had names. Their faces were as familiar as the faces of their parents. Worship was a septon with the censer and the smell of incense and seven sided crystal alive with light and voices raised in a song. The Talis kept God's wood as all the great houses did, but it was only place to walk or read or lie in the sun. Worship was for the sept. For her sake, Ned had built a small sept where she might sing to the seven faces of a god, but blood of the first men still flowed in the veins of a Starks, and his gods were the old ones, the nameless, faceless gods of a greenwood they shared with the vanished children of the forest. At the center of a grove, an ancient wirewood brooded over the small pool where the waters were black and cold. The heart tree, Ned called it. The wirewood's bark was white as a bone. Its leaves dark red like thousand bloodstained hands. A face had been carved in the trunk of a great tree. Its features, long and melancholy, a deep cut red eyes with dried sap and strangely watchful. They were old, those eyes, older man of Winterfell itself. They had seen Brander the Builder set the first stone. If the tales were true, they had watched the castle's granite walls rise around them. It was said that the children of a forest had carved the faces in the trees during the dawn of centuries before coming of the first men across narrow sea. In the south, the last wirewoods have been cut down or burned out 1,000 years ago, except on the isle of faces where tree the green men kept their silent watch. Up here it was different. Here every castle has his god's wood, and every god's wood has a heart tree, and every heart tree has its face. The Catelyn found her husband beneath the wirewood, seated on the moss-covered stone. The great sword ice was across his lap, and he was cleaning the blade with those waters, black as night. 1,000 years of humans lay thick upon Godswood floor, the swelling of the sound of her feet, but the red eyes of the Wearswood seems to follow her as she came and said, Ned. He lifted his head to look at her. Kathleen. His voice was distant and formal. Where are children? He said. He would always ask her that. In the kitchen, arguing about the names of the wall pups, she spread her cloak on the forest floor and sat beside the pool. Her back to the weirwood, she could see the eyes watching her, and she did her best to ignore them. Ara is already in love, Sansa is charming and gracious, but Recon is quite not sure. Is he afraid? A little. He is only 3. Ned frowned. He must learn to face his fears. He will not be 3 forever, and winter is coming. Yes, Catelyn agreed. The words gave her a chill, as they always did. The Stark words. Every noble house had its words, family mottos, touchstones, prayers of sorts. They boasted of honor and glory and promised the loyalty and truth, swore faith and courage. All but the Starks. Winter is coming, said the Stark words. Not for first time, she reflected on what strange people these Northerners are. The man died well. I will give him that, Ned said. He had a swatch of oiled leather in one hand and he ran lightly up the great sword as he spoke, polishing the metal to dark glow. I was glad for Bran's sake. You would have been proud of Bran. I am always proud of Bran, Kathleen replied, watching the sword as he stroked it. She could see the rippling deep within the steel where the metal had been folded back on itself. 100 times in a forging. Kathleen had no love for swords, but she could not deny ice had its own beauty. It had been forged in Valeria before the doom, and had come to the old freehold when ironsmiths had worked their metal with the spells as well as hammers. 400 years old it was, as sharp as the day it was forged. The name it bore was older still, a legacy from the age of heroes, when the Starks were kings in the north. He was a fourth this year, Ned said grimly. A poor man was half. Something had put a fear in him so deep that my words could not reach him. Bain writes that the strength of a night's watch is down below 1,000. It's not only desertions, they are losing men on ranging as well. Is that a wildlings? Who else? Ned lifted eyes, looked down the cool still length of it. It will only grow worse. Oh, the day may come I will have no choice but to call the Bannermas and ride north to deal with this king beyond the wall for a good and all. Beyond the wall, the thought made Kathleen shudder. Ned saw the dread on his face. Main's radar is nothing for us to fear. There are darker things beyond the wall. She glanced behind her at the hard tree and the pale black red eyes watching and listening, thinking its long, slow thoughts. His smile was gentle. You listen to many of the old land stories. The others are dead as the children of a forest, gone 8,000 years. The master Llewellyn will tell you they never lived at all. No living man has ever seen one until this morning. No living man ever heard of Darwin either, the Catholic reminded him. I want to know better than to argue with the Tully. He smiled with a rueful smile. He slid the ice back into the shelf. You did not come here to tell the crypt tales. I know how little you like this space. What is it, my lady? Kathleen looked at his husband's hand, and there was a grievous news today, my lord. I do not wish to trouble you until you had cleansed yourself. There was no way to soften the blow, so she told him straight, I am sorry, my lord. John Arryn is dead. His eyes found hers. She could see how hard it took him, as she had known it would. In, the, in his youth, Ned had fostered at Erin, and the childless Lord Arryn had become a second father to him and his fellow ward Robert Baratheon. When the Mad King Aerys to Targaryen has demanded their heads, the Lord of Erie has raised his moon and falcon banners in revolt rather than to give up those he had pledged to protect. And one day, 15 years ago, this second father had become brother as well, as he and Ned stood together in a sept at River Run to wed two sisters and daughters of a Lord Hoster Tully. John, he said, is this news certain? It was a king's seal, and letters in Robert's hand. I saved it for you. He said the Lord Arryn was taken quickly. Even the Master Pycelle was helpless, but he brought the milk of Poppy, so that John did not linger long in a pen. This is some small mercy, I suppose. She could see the grief on his face, but even then he thought first of her, you were sister, and John's boy, the word of them. The message said only they were well, had returned to Erie. The Kathleen said, I wish they had gone to River Run instead. The Erie is high and lonely, and it was her husband's place, not hers. The John's memories will haunt each stone. I know my sister, and she needs to comfort of family and friends around her. Your uncle waits in the well, does he not? The John named him Knight of the Gate. I heard. Catelyn nodded. The Brandon will do what he can for her and for the boy. That is some comfort, but still, go to her. Take the children, fill her halls with the noise and shouts and laughter. That boy of her needs other children around him, and Liza should not be alone in her grief. Would that I could. Later had other tidings. The king is riding to Winterfell to seek you out. It took Ned a moment to comprehend her words, but when the understanding came, the darkness left in his eyes. Robert is coming here. When she nodded, a smile broke across his face. The Kathleen wished she could share his joy, but she had heard the talks in the yards, the direhoof stayed in the snow, and broken antler in its throat. Dread coiled within her like a snake, but she forced herself to smile at this man she loved and this man who put no face in the signs. I knew that would please you. We should send a word to your brother on the wall. Yes, of course. Ben will want to be here. I shall tell the master Lovin to send his swiftest bird. Ned rose and pulled her to the feet. Damnation! How many years has it been? It gives us no more notice than this. How many in this party? How many in this party did message say? I should think of 100 knights at least, with all their retainers and half again with the free riders. Cersei and the children travel with them. The Robert will keep an easy pace for their sakes, he said. It was just well. That will give us more time to prepare. The Queen's brothers are also in the party. Ned grimaced at that. There was a small love between him and the Queen's family. Catelyn knew the Lannisters of a Casterly Rock had come late to the Robert's cause when the victory was all but certain, and he had never forgiven them. Well, if the price for a Robert's company is infestation of Lannisters, so be it. It sounds as though the Robert is bringing half of his court. Where the king goes, the realm follows, she says. It was good to see the children. The youngest was still sucking at the Lannister's woman's teat. The last time I saw him, he must be 5 by now. The Prince Tommen is 7, she said to him, the same age of Bran. Please, Ned, guard your tongue. The Lannister woman is our queen, and her pride is said to grow with every passing year. Ned squeezed her hand. There must be a feast, of course, with the singers and robbers will want to hunt. I shall send a Joy south with the honor guard to meet them on the King's Road and escort them back. Gods, how are we going to feed them all? On his way already, you said, right? Damn the man, damn the royal head. Daenerys. Her brother held a gown up for inspection. This is beauty. Touch it. Go on. Caress the fabric. Danny touched it. The cloth was so smooth that it seems to run through her fingers like a water. She could not remember ever wearing anything so soft. It frightened her. She pulled her hand away. Is it really mine? A gift from Magister Illyrio, the Viserys said, smiling. Her brother was in high mood tonight. The color will bring out the violet in your eyes, and you should have a gold as well and the jewels of all sorts. Ilario has promised. Tonight you must look like a princess. Princess, and thought. She had forgotten what that was like. Perhaps she had never really known. Why does he give us so much? What does he want from us? For the nigh and half a year they had lived in the magister's house, eating his food, pampered by his servants. Danny was 13, old enough to know that such gifts seldom come without their prize here in the free city of Pentos. Illyrios is no fool, Viserys said. He was a count young man with the nervous hands and feverish look in his pale Aelic eyes. The Magister knows that I will not forget my friends when I come into my throne. Danny said nothing. Magister was a dealer in spices, gemstones, dragon bone, and other less savory things. He had friends all in the nine free cities, and it was said, and even beyond in Vane's Dothrak and fabled lands beside the Jade Sea. It was also said that he had never had a friend he wouldn't carefully sell for a right price. The Danny listened to the talk in the streets. She heard these things, but she knew better than to question her brother when he wove his webs of dream. His anger has terrible thing when roused. Viserys called it waking the dragon. Her brother hung the gown beside the door. Illyrius will send the slaves to bathe you. Be sure you wash off the stink of the stables. Khal Drago has 1,000 horses tonight. He looks for a different sort of mount. He studied her critically. You still slouch. Straighten yourself. He pushed back her shoulders with his hands. Let them see that you have woman shape now. His fingers brushed lightly over her budding breast and tightened on nipple. You will not fail me tonight. If you do, it will go hard for you. You don't want to wake a dragon, do you? His fingers twisted her and pinched cruelly hard through the rough fabric of her tunic. Do you? He repeated. No, Danny said meekly. Her brother smiled. Good. He touched her hair almost with affection. When they write a history of my reign, sweet sister, they will know, say that it began tonight. When he was gone, Danny went to her window and looked down wistfully on the waters of the bay. The square brick of towers of Pentos were black silt houses, silhouettes, outlined against the setting sun. Danny could hear the singing of a red priest as they lit their night fires and shouts of the raised children playing games beyond the walls of his state. For a moment she wished she could be out there with them, barefoot, breathless, and dressed in tatters, with no past, no future, no feast to attend at a Khal Drogo's manse. Somewhere beyond the sunset, across the narrow sea, lay a land of green hills and flowered plains and great rushing rivers, where the towers of a dark stone rose amidst the magnificent blue-grey mountains.